The power went out in the middle of the most important morning of the year. 1 second, the boardroom was all bright lights, screens glowing, investors nodding at their charts, and the next, the whole place sank into darkness. Panic swept across the table. People with degrees from schools I could never afford scrambled like kids who'd lost their homework. Not one of them dared promise they could fix it in time. I just stood in the corner with my tool belt, quiet, watching. Then I heard her voice cut through the chaos. Madison Blackwell, 30-something CEO of Blackwell Energy, the woman the business papers called the Ice Queen. She didn't even bother to hide the smirk when her eyes landed on me. "If you can fix that generator before 2 o'clock," she said, slow and sharp so everyone could hear, "I'll kiss you right here in front of my entire team. Fail and you're out. No severance, no reference. Deal." The room went silent, like she'd just thrown down a gauntlet in some medieval hall. People looked at me expecting me to flinch, maybe beg for mercy, but all I could think about was my little girl waiting for her school's robotics fair that night. "I don't care about your kiss, Ms. Blackwell," I said. "I care about the lights being on so my daughter's project doesn't get canceled. That's the only deal that matters to me." Then I turned and walked straight to the generator room. She thought she'd humiliate me. Truth is, she reminded me of every officer who ever looked down on enlisted mechanics, every executive who thought grease on your hands meant grease on your soul. Madison had no idea who I was before the jumpsuit. Years ago, I was Major Daniel Hayes, Army Corps of Engineers. I kept hospitals running under mortar fire with nothing but busted parts and stubbornness. I traded in that career when my wife walked out, leaving me with a 6-month-old and no roadmap except be the dad she deserves. So yeah, I knew a little something about fixing things. The generator was a monster, new, expensive, all the safety redundancies corporate engineers brag about. But I'd seen this type of failure before. The fancy diagnostics screamed electrical, but I recognized the mechanical stutter in the exhaust. A relief valve choking the whole system. You don't learn that in textbooks. You learn it sweating in sandstorms, praying the lights come back before the surgeons run out of daylight. So I stripped wires with hands that hadn't forgotten the rhythm, built a bypass the manuals would have called insane. Sweat ran down my back. Alarms blared in red letters telling me to stop, but I kept going. Because in my head I wasn't in a corporate basement, I was back in Kabul, and lives depended on me. Only this time it was just one life I cared about most. My daughter Emily, who'd built her robot with duct tape, spare parts, and a dream. When the clock showed 1:57, I twisted the last connection. For a second, nothing. Dead silence. I could hear the engineers upstairs snickering, already ready to watch me walk out with a cardboard box. Then the whole machine shuddered, groaned, and roared back like a giant woken from the dead. Lights blazed, screens blinked, and the building came alive. The applause that echoed in that boardroom wasn't for me. It was for their precious launch being saved. Madison stood frozen, watching me through the glass, her mouth-tight eyes unreadable. I didn't give her the satisfaction of a look back. I checked the time, grabbed my tools, and headed for the exit. Emily's science fair started at 6, and I wasn't about to miss it. That should have been the end of it, but life doesn't work that clean. Days after, I kept catching Madison watching me on camera feeds and hallways through tinted glass, like she couldn't decide if I was a threat or a puzzle. And I'll admit, she wasn't easy to ignore either. Perfect suits, perfect hair, perfect armor, built on a foundation of pain I didn't know yet. She once barked at me over a smudge of mud on her car. Later I learned she watched the footage of me wiping it off carefully, then sharing my lunch with a homeless vet by the garage. Maybe that's when her walls cracked a little. It wasn't long before she started showing up where I was working. At first with excuses, then with questions. About Emily, about why I'd walked away from the military, about what it costs to put someone else first. One night she surprised herself by admitting what happened to her mother when she was a teenager, how she found the body, how the note said, "Love is weakness." I'd heard a lot of confessions in war zones, but that one, it carved right through her polished exterior. I told her the truth as I see it. Love is the only thing that makes you strong enough to get through the worst. She didn't argue. She just sat there, the Ice Queen, suddenly human. But nothing in her world stays secret. Her father, Victor Blackwell, The kind of man who thinks money buys gravity, spotted the way she looked at me. He cornered her and said, "End it now. That man is beneath you. Don't embarrass this family." She denied it, but she knew he was right about one thing. She did look at me differently. The dam finally broke one night when Emily came down with a fever while I was still on shift. I had no sick days left, so I brought her to the break room wrapped in a blanket. Madison found us there. She didn't hesitate. Drove us home in her Tesla, sat in our tiny apartment while I tucked Emily in, made instant coffee in a chipped mug like she'd done it 1,000 times. That night we talked until the sun came up about everything: war, love, loss, hope. Something shifted. We tried to keep it quiet, but secrets leak. At the company Christmas gala, her father exposed us in front of everyone, called me out, fired me on the spot, promised to ruin me if I ever came near his daughter again. I stood tall, dignity intact, but inside I was already bracing for goodbye. Madison had two choices: stay her father's heir or burn the whole script he'd written for her. She shocked the room, set down her glass, lifted her chin, and said loud enough for every socialite and senator to hear, "No, I'm done living your life. Love isn't weakness. It's the only thing that makes us human." Then she walked out, past the whispers, past her father's glare, straight to the parking lot where I was packing up. "You'd give up everything I asked," rain running down my face. She smiled, freer than I'd ever seen her. "I'm not giving up anything that matters. I'm fixing something that was broken." We kissed, not the power play she'd once mocked me with, but a kiss that rebuilt two shattered people into something whole. 5 years later, we weren't on magazine covers. We ran a small outfit, Hayes Blackwell Solutions, bringing renewable energy to communities that big corporations ignored. Emily was 12. Her robot won the state championship, and she called Madison Mom without hesitation. Our office was small, the coffee cheap, but the walls were covered with drawings, laughter, life. Sometimes people ask if I regret leaving behind the money, the status, the chance to climb ladders I once cared about. I don't. Because when the lights went out, it wasn't the degrees or the titles that saved the day. It was a janitor with a toolbox and a reason bigger than himself. And maybe that's the part I want you to think about. Who decides what makes someone beneath you? The suit, the paycheck, or the way they show up when it counts? Tell me, have you ever been written off only to prove you were the one keeping everything running? Or maybe you've judged someone too fast and later realized they were the strongest person in the room. Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I want to hear where you stand on this. Was Madison right to risk it all? Or was Victor right when he said love is weakness?